Okay, welcome to Faith Vocals. My name is Faith. I've been having some issues with OBS, but it looks like it wants to behave today, so we'll see how this goes. And as always, YouTube is taking some time catching up, so we'll see. I think I'm fine. I think we're all set and started, so welcome. Today we are going to be looking at, let's see, at the end of last stream, I stopped at the end of Genesis chapter 9. We wrapped up Genesis chapter 9, but I want to get back to that, kind of do a recap of that, get a running start into today's stream, because I think it's going to be relevant to our topic. And my hope is that we're going to go through the end of Genesis chapter 9 through Genesis chapter 10. And then we're going to, if all works well, the way I plan, we're going to get to Genesis chapter 11 and cover the story of the Tower of Babel. And then, let's see, we've got another genealogy after that. I don't think we'll be going all the way through Genesis chapter 11. We'll just be hitting the end of the Tower of Babel story. I say story in the moment because when I was a kid, I was raised on quote-unquote Bible stories. But I do believe that these accounts are accounts. They are historical. They really happened. So sometimes I slip into the language I have been raised with, but I've also been raised to believe that this is a true book, that we are looking at history here, and that these events actually did happen. So I'll go ahead and get into that, and then once we get done, my plan is to play Minecraft. Been a while since we've been in my Minecraft world. We're going to be trying to crawl toward getting the game beaten. Doubt we're going to get that far today, but we're going to get a little closer, I hope. And then next week, I'm planning to cycle on to the next game that I have played before on the channel, which I think is My Time at Portia. So if all goes well, then next week will be a session in My Time at Portia. I've been going through games in segments of several weeks per game, but the way I've been doing it, I've been trying to switch out of games periodically so that this channel gets known for being a channel where we talk about beliefs, my belief, your beliefs, where we have a civil conversation about the differences possibly between our beliefs, and are able to compare and contrast without expectation of changing beliefs, but to give one another a chance to hear each other out. Maybe I'll learn something from you and what you believe. Maybe you might learn something from me and what I believe. So that's the goal of the channel. That's what I want to be known for. But then at the end, I play games, and I think that's a good time to be talking about things that are maybe not so heavy, if you like, not so philosophical. Doesn't require as much mental concentration. Since I'm at that time playing a video game, I find it's very difficult to juggle video games and serious conversation. I'm sure a lot of streamers wind up with the same issue. I am not the only one that I know of who has talked about that kind of thing. So for now, we'll get into the discussion of religion, philosophy. I've been going through a series on the Bible, and then if you have any questions about the Bible passage, my beliefs, my faith, my religious faith, or if you'd like to say something about what you believe, then this would be a great time to do it. I'm willing to engage in conversation. But if it's going to be lighter, if it's going to be like how's my day been, how's your day been, what's our favorite colors, that kind of thing, I'll probably be more attentive to those kinds of questions during the gameplay. Anyway, I'll get in. So last week we covered the end of Noah and the flood, and there's a story, an account at the end of Noah's flood. Noah has been on this ark. His family is the only family to survive the Great Deluge, they call it, the global flood. Every other human on Earth, every other land animal besides the ones that are on the ark, has been completely wiped out. The Bible, the term I've seen used in the Bible is blotted out, has been destroyed by the flood. But God gave Noah some foresight, gave him a warning: build yourself an ark, be prepared to take a sample of all the animals on the earth, all the land animals, all the birds on the earth, to join you on the ark. You and your family, your 3 sons, their wives, you, your wife, you're all going to go on the ark. You're all going to be saved, and everything else is going to be destroyed. So we, last week, wrapped up that count and saw the... it kind of got a sense of the cabin fever that this poor family has had to go through as they were waiting for their chance to leave this vessel of safety, of salvation that God had provided them. But of course they were eager to get back to their land lives, whatever they would be, following the flood. So the Bible talks about the transition between the old world before the flood, during the time of the flood. It took about, as far as I can tell, it took about a year for everything to settle itself out again, maybe a little more than a year. And finally the land was habitable again, and Noah and his family and all of the animals could return to land, and God promised that the earth would never be destroyed by flood again. That's why we've got the rainbow. God I'm possibly altered physics in order to create this sign in the sky, which I think is interesting. I don't know that anyone ever complains about seeing a rainbow. I think everybody universally enjoys the sight of a rainbow, and I think that's intentional. God is trying to encourage us by his mercy that, yes, he knows we are fallen creatures. We are not the perfect creatures that he created us to be. Each one of us does things that are in rebellion against him. However, he is going to be merciful and not destroy the world a second time with a flood. So the where we are now, the account that I covered last week, I'm just going to recap this week. We have a brief story about how Noah, after the flood, raised a vineyard. So did some farming, raised some grapes, enjoyed the fruit of the grapes, probably a little bit too much, got drunk on the grapes, and then he was indecently exposed in his tent. So at least he was in his tent, but his son Ham found him indecently exposed, and instead of taking care of his father and seeing to it that he was honored and correcting the situation, Ham goes and tells the story to his brothers Shem and Japheth. So that it not honoring his father at all. It's very demeaning. And then Shem and Japheth, what they did, they took a blanket, held it over their shoulders, and walked into the tent backwards, and were able to cover Noah up without looking at him in his exposed state. So that they were showing honor to Noah. Ham was not showing honor to Noah, and so naturally Noah was very upset with his son Ham. And very angry, what he does is he makes a curse. Not like swearing, but apparently in that time they would actually proclaim future harm, and apparently that landed, but it didn't land on Ham. Noah, for some reason, wasn't cursing the son who had done him the wrong. He chose to curse Ham's son, Canaan. We've got this verse here. Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brothers. He also blessed Shem and Japheth. So he said, blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. So that is a story we get shortly after the flood. And tell you what, there are a lot of cases where people get embarrassed because of their foolishness, especially when they get drunk. They do things that lack judgment. It winds up being a scandalous situation. So from the time of Noah all the way to the end of the writings of the Bible, I'm sure there were plenty of stories like this, but the Bible doesn't give the account of everyone who does something embarrassing while they were drunken and gets ashamed of it. Especially, I think there have got to be cases where people have gotten into even worse trouble than Noah. Noah finds himself in this situation. He's made a laughingstock by his son, but I mean, given the sinfulness of humanity, I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to see someone using a situation like this for blackmail or that kind of thing. And the Bible doesn't call attention to that. So why is it calling attention to this story where Noah is embarrassed? Last week, I think I kind of highlighted that Noah had been the man. He is the sole reason human race exists today. The sole reason that you and I are here on this earth, according to the Bible, is because when every single heart, every single thought on the planet Earth was evil, there was one man who was walking with God, and that was Noah. There was one man who was at least trying to be right with God. And so God, the Bible uses the phrase, found favor with Noah. And so he gave Noah the information he needed to be prepared for the flood. Noah obeyed God, which is important, and that obedience allowed him to save himself, his family, and the entire human race through their line. So now we have Noah to thank for being here. And that raises the question, I keep going back to this verse because it's very important in our understanding of the Bible and of this book of Genesis. When the first human beings, Adam and Eve were living on the earth, Eve committed the first sin. She ate the fruit of the tree that God had told them not to eat. And that was not as small as a sin as we might think, because what she was doing when she disregarded what God had told her and Adam to do, and Adam decided he was going to side with his wife on that. He was going to take from the fruit also instead of siding with God and doing what God said. But when Eve took that fruit instead of obeying God, what she was saying in her heart, the Bible doesn't give us her thoughts, but we can understand that there is a message behind her action. And her action said, God doesn't matter. In fact, God doesn't exist. I don't fear God. I'm not worried about what God thinks. I think God is actually holding out on me. That's the lie that the serpent, who enticed Eve to take the fruit, that's the lie that the serpent said. He said that if you eat this fruit, you will be like God, knowing good and evil. You will be as wise as God. And so in Eve's action, she is saying, God is not good, and God is not powerful, and God does not care. In fact, God may as well not exist. I'd rather God didn't exist, because then I could have this fruit that God's told me not to have. So I can't make God stop existing, but I can act like he doesn't exist. And so in her heart, she was wiping out God. So that, as I say, Eve was a finite creature. She had a limited scope to her, limited knowledge, limited ability to be in any place, limited time on the planet. She had a beginning. So let's see, omniscient. She had a limited power, limited ability to do things. So, but God is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, and timeless. Does not have a beginning, does not have an end. And so here Eve is committing an infinite crime. She is a finite creature committing an infinite crime, trying to wipe out the infinite God through this action. So because she is committing an infinite crime against the one who created her, the sovereign of the universe, then she faces an infinite debt, an infinite punishment for that crime that she cannot pay because she's only a finite creature. And that every single human being at some point, Adam did it. We find Noah being drunken. There was the story of Cain and Abel. Cain murdered his brother. They were the They were Adam and Eve's children. Cain committed the first murder. Every single human being in history has done something where in our hearts, through the message of our actions, we're saying, I can't erase God, but I'm going to try by pretending he doesn't exist. And, of course, I'm a Christian, and so I believe God does exist. You may be saying, but God doesn't exist. I'm not committing a crime because God really doesn't exist. And so my suggestion is, well, how do you know? How do we know that God doesn't exist? That's a conversation I'm willing to have on the channel. I've mentioned in the past some reasons that I think that it's very likely that God does exist. I am as sure as I know anything. I believe I know that God exists. So I try to be a little bit humble. I try to recognize that I might not know everything. I don't know everything, and so I might be wrong in some cases, but I don't believe I can be wrong about God's existence here. Based on the explanations that I've heard for his existence, and some of which I've given on the channel. I'm sure there will be more to come. So, Eve is a finite being facing an infinite punishment that she could never sustain. She's got an infinite debt she can never pay back, and what God tells Adam and Eve in the middle of punishing them for this crime, the payment for this crime was death, but it also that death is a finite punishment, and this is an infinite crime. So there is more to it than just death. God extends a curse to the land, a curse to the future of females, where we all deal with this issue, pain in childbearing. Not seeing eye to eye with our husband is a common thing. But in the middle of dishing out this justice to Eve, to Adam, and to the serpent, who were all involved in this sin, God says to the serpent, he curses the serpent, saying, I will put enmity, and I keep doing that. I keep pulling up that footnote by accident. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. So this is going to extend into the future too. This is not just for this one serpent, even though later on in the Bible, the devil, Satan, God's enemy, is called the serpent, and it's a callback to this moment. Satan was the one who was the serpent, enticing the woman to sin against God. So that is the one who has the enmity with us. Genesis calls him the serpent, and then we know him by the name Satan from the rest of the Bible. But I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. Let me check out that footnote. Okay, seed. So I'm not going to dig into that. I don't believe that Satan has any sons or daughters or anything like that, but I do think that there is a result from him being opposed to God here on the planet Earth. There are those who follow him. There is going to be, at the end of time, someone known as the Antichrist, who is going to be working very closely with Satan, or Satan will be working very closely with. So that may be the seed referred here, the offspring. So, the woman's offspring, he, shall bruise your head, and as I've said before, bruise can also be translated crush. The Hebrew word could be bruise or crush. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. So, I'd rather, assuming that the word is crush, because I think that's the right way to read the passage, I'd rather be crushed on the heel than the head. I am more likely to survive if I'm crushed on the heel than on the head. This is talking about the destruction of Satan. This is the verse about the deliverer. So one reason that I think let's see, where am I? I can go back to Genesis 9 now. One reason that I think the Bible talks about this point where Noah is embarrassed here by his son Ham is to show that Noah is not perfect. Noah also has his own sin. The Bible later on tells us not to become drunk. That is not God's will for us. So Noah suffers from this sin also. He is also... I'm trying to think through how I want to put this. I've heard someone basically say that when the man and the woman took of the fruit, when they listened to the serpent, they were giving the serpent the dominion over the earth that they ought to have had. God gave man and woman the right to rule over the plants and animals, to be in charge of the earth, to be God's stewards, God's representatives on the earth. And then they obeyed the serpent, and that gave Satan the control of the earth. And later on in the Bible, we do see Satan saying, all the kingdoms of the earth belong to me. Definitely, he has taken a position of command. He's claiming control over the earth. He was speaking to God himself when he said that, to God the Son, Jesus. And so we're seeing that Noah is not even free of the command, basically, of Satan. Even he is not completely free, is not able to redeem humanity from the sin that each one of us commits. Noah has his own sins, so he's not able to take on the sins of someone else. He would have to pay for his own infinite crime against God. I think that's one reason that this passage is here, but there's a second reason also. And it has to do with why the book of Genesis is in the Bible, because the Bible is a book about the Hebrew people, also known as Israel, the nation of Israel, the people group, the family of Israel that has become a nation over time, that has grown to become the nation of Israel. How did this nation come to be? Where did this nation come from? And so after we get done with this chapter, chapter 11, we're going to probably next week, if all goes well, step into chapter 12. And that's where the meat of Genesis really happens. Then we're going to be spending a lot of time with a man named Abraham, who is considered the father of the Hebrew people. Going to spend some time with Abraham and then his son Isaac, and then Jacob is going to be the last member of that group of people who finishes out the book. We're going to end the book of Genesis at the end, pretty close to the end of Jacob's life. And that tells the story of where the nation of Israel comes from. Jacob's name also, he had two names. He started out Jacob, and then God gave him the name Israel, which means struggles with God. And we'll get to that story, how he got that name in the future, Lord willing. There's a passage at the end of the Bible in the book of James where it says that those of us who are Christians who follow God should always be aware that we're not in charge. God is in charge. God may change our plans. So it says, don't say I'm going to do business in this town. Say, if the Lord wills, I'll do business in this town. And I've got a friend who practices that very well. She's always saying, I'll see you next week, Lord willing, that kind of thing. And it's kind of rubbed off on me, and I think that's a good thing. So Lord willing, we'll be able to cover that story about how the name of Israel came to exist in the future. But we're talking about Noah and his son Ham, and Noah gives this curse to Canaan, and that is going to be very important in the creation of the nation of Israel in the future. So once we get into the book of Exodus, we'll be able to see where that becomes more relevant. But as we're at the end of this story, looking at this setup, Ham's son Canaan has this curse that, spoiler alert, it's going to be honored in the future. And Noah has these three sons who are the sole survivors of the flood after him. And these are going to be the three sons that are going to continue the human race. So now we reach a genealogy. There are several of these in the Bible, and if you're reading the Bible on your own, sometimes it's really easy to want to skip through these because there's a lot of names that it's hard to say, and what do we care about any of these names? The reason that the genealogies are in the Bible, one reason is that God cares about each of these names and about each of the people that bore them. God knew each of these people personally, even if these people did not know God personally. And so God has allowed them to be recorded in the Bible. This is also a bridge to get us from Noah to the next point we're going. Here, this particular genealogy, the point is to tell us where the people of the earth came from. We have Noah, we have his 3 sons, and they've got their wives, and that's all the people on the earth. This one family. How did we get to 7 billion people, or whatever the billions of people were at the end of the writing of the Bible, but how did we get to all of the billions of people that we have today from these 3 sons of Noah? So, here are the generations of the sons of Noah: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood, and good thing. The sons of Japheth, we have all these names, and I'm not going to try to read through all of them. They don't mean a lot to us, but I do have a picture that I want to show us, and I do want to point out a couple of the names. Tell you what, I'm going to save the picture, the map, until after we get through the names. I want to point out a couple names that stand out to me. I have no idea who all of these people are, so that's where the map is nice. It's going to tell us where each of these people supposedly settled, and I'll get to more about the map later, but so that will fill in some of my lack of knowledge as we're talking. But one of the names that stands out to me here is this name Magog. Magog is a name that we see later on in the Bible, especially at the end of the Bible, talking about the end of time. Tells us, I'm trying to remember, let me actually look this up. I think this is where we find it. Yes, okay. So, at the end of time, there's going to be 7 years that the Bible prophesies are going to be the time of God's judgment on the earth. And the way that I believe is not the way that most Christians believe about this. A lot of Christians believe it's the whole 7 years. But this 7-year period is definitely significant in the book of Daniel. It calls out there's going to be this 7-year period that's significant at the end of time. And I don't, it's not relevant, my particular take on this subject at this time, but the 7 years are going to happen. It's going to be a time of hardship for Christians, because the enemies of God are going to become more prominent then. Satan is going to exert great force on the earth. He is going to be behind the Antichrist, and the false prophet are a couple of the characters that are mentioned in the book of Revelation. At the end of time, they're going to have supernatural power to command the earth and to kill Christians for worshiping God and not giving in to what they say. And so, going to be a time of hardship for Christians like me. But also, God is going to judge the earth for its sin at that time. God is holding out now because He's merciful. He wants to give us time to learn who He is and to choose to turn away from our sin. The Bible word for that is repent. Wants to give us a chance to turn to Him and to seek His forgiveness for our sin. And but at this time, it's the cutoff point. God has to enforce justice sometime. It's going to be at that time. And so at the end of the 7 years, those who have rebelled against God are going to be wiped out. There's going to be a time on the earth of 1,000 years. God's kingdom will be on the earth. Jesus will be reigning over the kingdom as king. And it's going to be a more moral period than today, where Satan is kind of free to do his own thing. Satan, it says, will be bound up for that 1,000 years. And certainly will not be able to act in human affairs the way that he has been. However, the people on the earth, from what I understand, from what the Bible says about end times, the people who go into that kingdom, the people who survive that 7 years and go into that kingdom, they will be the ones who have submitted to God and are right with God. But those who are alive will continue to have families, and will continue to have children, and those children will have to decide whether they're going to follow God or not. And it'll be easier to follow God at that time because the government will be God's government. So good will be rewarded and evil will be punished. But there are going to be some people who would rather not follow God even at that time. And this passage here says, at the end of the 1,000 years, Satan will be released and will come out to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog. So here's Magog again. Gog, probably like the land that Magog rules, something like that. I'm not an expert. Maybe there's someone who knows better what Gog is. But Magog is certainly the same name that we're seeing. Probably that people group is going to be the focus of Satan's deception here, to gather them for battle. So this group of people is going to come out and battle against God, but that doesn't end well. And that is going to be the end of Satan and of those who rebel against God. So we see Magog winds up being significant at the end of the Bible, and is also significant here at the beginning of the Bible. Here he is, son of Japheth. So I am an American. I live in the United States of America. I'm of European descent. So I would be one of the descendants of Japheth. So I don't believe I would be a descendant of Magog. I'm not sure which people group I come from here, but I would be descended from this particular son of Noah. So there's Magog. Madai, there was a group of people called the Medes. We see more about them in the book of Daniel. The Medes joined up with the Persians, or there's a group called the Medo-Persians. So the nation of the Medes, the nations of the Persians. I'm not familiar in history with how they got to become the Medo-Persians, but they then destroyed Babylon, which was holding Israel, the nation of Israel, in exile at that time. So now Israel used to be under exile to Babylon. Now they're under exile under the Medo-Persians. But Madai would have been the ancestor of the Medes. Javan, I think I've heard that is where the Greeks come from. Would be descendants of Javan. And then the rest of these I'm not so familiar with. This name stands out to me, Ashkenaz, son of Gomer. There is a group of the Jewish people known as the Ashkenazi Jews. There's also the Sephardic Jews. And what makes these names significant to me is that the Bible tells us that God established the nation of Israel in the land that is now Israel. However, Israel has not always followed God, has not always followed his law. And so they chose to follow idols rather than God, were more loyal to their idolatry than to God. And so God dealt justice to them by having the nation of Assyria and the nation of Babylon come and take them captive and take them from the land. Eventually, under the Medo-Persians, the Jewish people were allowed to return to Israel. And then fast forward through history, there's the time of Jesus. Jesus comes to earth, is God's son on the earth. He takes our sin by dying a criminal's death on the cross, even though he lived perfectly. He committed no sin himself because he's the Son of God, and died a criminal's death to take our punishment upon him. So being the Son of God, God being an infinite being, Jesus is an infinite being who's taken on a finite form, our humanity, so that he can stand in our place as a human, but he's an infinite being, and he has committed no sin. The Bible says he's completely sinless, so that means he doesn't have any of his own sin to pay for. So when he died that criminal's death, unjustly, because he had no sin, he was taking on our infinite punishment. He's the only person who could stand in our place and take that infinite punishment, so that we don't have to bear God's wrath. Jesus bore God's wrath, and the Bible tells us that Jesus died, was in the grave for 3 days, and then he rose again, which indicates that God was pleased with his sacrifice. He was actually qualified to be the sacrifice for our sin. And so Jesus does that, and then in 70 AD, so that's give or take 70 years, there's a little bit of difference in the numbers. AD means the year of our Lord, so you would think it would start at Jesus' birth, but there was some calendar issues, and so it's a little bit off. But in 70 AD, the Rome, as I understand, attacked Israel, attacked Jerusalem, attacked the temple, destroyed the temple, exiled the Jewish people. The Roman government would not allow the Jewish people to live in Israel anymore. I think that was because they thought that the Jews were troublemakers, because the Jews had rebelled against Rome. That's why Rome came and attacked. So then the Jews were spread out, just like when they were in exile under Assyria, under Babylon. Both of these events created what's known as a diaspora, a dispersion. The Jewish people were dispersed to different places in the world. They couldn't live in their homeland of Israel, so they had to go out to other places of the world. And so the Ashkenazi Jews and the Sephardic Jews were two groups of Jewish people that were part of this dispersion. They live in different locales, and I couldn't accurately tell you which locales, but they are Jews from the diaspora who created their own communities while they were away from the land of Israel. And I think both of these communities wound up dealing with persecution, which is why they stand out in history. But my understanding is probably the Ashkenazi Jews either, let's see, I've heard that, well, they're basically named, I think, for the land that they traveled to. I think, I did look this up. I looked at a commentary or an interpretation of this name. I like to go, this is, this website that I'm using is blb.org, blueletterbible.org. And I like it for these tools. You could look at the actual Hebrew words and see the interpretations of the Hebrew words. So there's a section here that talks about a possible misunderstanding. Some people think that the area that Ashkenaz went to was Germany. Others think it was Armenia. So I don't know. I am not an expert. I have no knowledge. I just recognize that word. Ashkenaz. Oh, Ashkenazi. Oh, the Ashkenazi Jewish people. I wonder if they're related. So that stands out to me. Tarshish. That gets mentioned in the book of Jonah in the Bible. God told the prophet Jonah to go and talk to the Ninevites, who were the Assyrians who had attacked Israel. Jonah was not very happy with them. There were some racial tensions between him and the Assyrians. He did not want to go to Nineveh and tell them how to be right with God. So he said, I'm going to run to Tarshish. So interesting that name comes up. It says, from these the coastland people spread in their lands, each with their own language by their clans and their nations. So Jonah went by ship to Tarshish. That all makes sense. So now we get to Ham. The sons of Ham. Cush, Egypt. Oh, that's a familiar name. Put, and Canaan, which if you're familiar with the the first 5 books of the Bible, that'll be a familiar name too. I want to show us something here about Egypt. A lot of the verses of the Bible have this name Mizraim. So I think there's some reading in here where the ESV translators recognize that Mizraim settled Egypt, and so they've put Egypt in there. I'm not sure whether they're aware if he had another name, or how closely the word Egypt is to Mizraim, but we'll get into the map and we'll see how they're related. So Cush, the sons of Cush, none of these really stand out except Sheba. There was a queen of Sheba who went to see Solomon later on in the Bible. I think there's another Sheba in another genealogy, so I'm not sure if this is the same one who established the land that the Queen of Sheba was in charge of. Here's something important for what we're going to do today. Probably a lot of what I'm saying is irrelevant to you at this time if you don't plan to stick around and see future streams where I hope to, Lord willing, cover these subjects. But this is going to be covered today. Cush fathered Nimrod. Who's Nimrod? Maybe if you're old enough, you've watched Bugs Bunny episodes. And you see Elmer Fudd hunting Bugs Bunny. He's going to catch that wascally rabbit. And Bugs Bunny says, "What a Nimrod, what a maroon." And there's a good reason why Bugs Bunny is saying maroon instead of moron. That comes from the Bible, why he would say maroon instead of moron. I'm pretty sure that the word he was going for was moron, but they dodged that one. I am not being as cautious as the people who wrote the Bugs Bunny episodes. Possibly we'll get to that point sometime in the distant future. But he calls Elmer Fudd a Nimrod. Why is that? So Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. So Bugs Bunny is essentially playing along with this, is essentially saying that proverb. He's saying, oh, Elmer Fudd, he's that, yeah, mighty hunter like Nimrod. Except Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd never catches Bugs Bunny, so clearly a lot of sarcasm in that reference. I thought it was interesting, this word mighty man. I did look that up at one point. In the Hebrew, it's Gibor. And here in Genesis chapter 6, I was talking about the Nephilim. They were mighty men who were of old, men of renown. So we kind of get a sense of what a mighty man is, a man of renown. So Nimrod had earned this proverb. He was clearly a man of renown. So before the flood, we had the Nephilim who had earned this renown. But after the flood, I guess Nimrod was the first to be a renowned man. So it says the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. We're going to see more about Babel coming up. Erech, Akkad. If you're familiar with YouTube creators, especially of the political persuasion, you might know of a fellow named Sargon of Akkad. I think he's named after a person in history. I don't know if it's a person who shows up in the Bible or if there was just a Sargon mentioned in history or in ancient literature. But Sargon would have been a descendant of Nimrod, probably. And so Nimrod would have established this land area of Akkad. Calneh in the land of Shinar. So I guess these were cities that were in this land called Shinar. From that land he went into Assyria. So interesting that he's in the region of Assyria. And built Nineveh. So now we know where the city of Nineveh comes from. Rehoboth-ir, Calah, and Resen, between Nineveh and Calah, that is the great city. So Egypt, or like I said from other versions of the Bible, you would see the name Mizraim. Fathered these folks, would have settled around Egypt, but this is interesting. Casluhim, from whom the Philistines came. So later on in the Bible, the Philistines become great enemies of the Israeli people, wind up oppressing the people of Israel while Israel is turning away from God and is not following him carefully. So that's where they're descended from. Canaan. Okay, so this is someone who's going to be important in the future. Canaan fathered Sidon. There were a couple cities in the Bible, and I think even in the time of Jesus, known as Tyre and Sidon. You kind of see these cities together. So Sidon would have been the founder of either the city or the land where that city was made. Sidon was his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites. So some of these names are the names of peoples that in Exodus, Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, the law of Israel, God is giving instructions to the Israelites, and he's saying, there are these nations in this land that you're going to conquer. There is an outcry against these nations because they are so wicked. I'm going to judge these nations, and the way I'm going to judge these nations is you're going to go in and conquer them, and you're going to own this land, the promised land. You are going to take over the land instead of these nations. And Israel had varying success with conquering the land. The Jebusites, they definitely didn't drive out the Jebusites fully until like the time of David. So the Jebusites got to stick around for a long time, but they were supposed to be God's instrument of justice against these nations for the wickedness that they had. Not all of them. Jebusites, Amorites, Hivites, I think, are definitely some. I don't know if the Girgashites was part of that group. There's like 7 nations that Israel was supposed to drive out. The Canaanites, I think, is interesting. Sounds a lot like Sinai, like Mount Sinai, where Israel first received where Israel received their law from Moses. So I wonder if those would be people who settled around the area of Sinai. Got some more here. Afterward, the clans of the Canaanites dispersed. I don't know what afterward would be. Maybe after these regions were settled. And the territory of the Canaanites extended from Sidon in the direction of Gerar as far as Gaza, and in the direction of Sodom, Gomorrah. Those are going to be important cities in the book of Genesis here. Admah and Zeboim as far as Lasha. These are the sons of Ham by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. And then we get to Shem. We're going to find out more about Shem moving on after Genesis 11, after the Tower of Babel account. We see more of a genealogy about Shem and how it led to Abraham. So I'm not going to linger here, but I do want to stop on Peleg. Means division. So to Eber, this one descendant of Shem, were born 2 sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. So I think even for those who have studied, say, tectonics, who have studied the history of the land masses of the earth, the geologists, we kind of have this understanding in history that Earth was one land mass. So Earth would have been one land mass at this time. And the Bible tells us that in the days of Peleg, the Earth was divided. So that apparently is where the event where the continents started to drift apart. That's where that would have happened, if I'm understanding correctly, unless Peleg was of the generation that that is going to be part of the account that I'm going to talk about. So let me just make sure there's nothing else that jumps out at me. I have no idea if Sephar has anything to do with the Sephardic Jews or not. I'd be curious to find out about that. So these are the sons of Shem, and the nation of Israel is a Semitic nation, so they are descended from Shem. These are the clans of the sons of Noah, according to their genealogies and their nations, and from these the nations spread abroad in the earth after the flood. So we've been through all these names. And really quick, I just want to make sure that we remember one little detail. Ham had the son Cush. Cush fathered Nimrod. So Nimrod would have been the grandson of Ham. That is the distance in time between the time that Noah and his sons survived the flood and the time that we're going to be at now. But I want to go ahead and pull up my map, give us some pictures so we can kind of understand a few more details. This map shows us some of the names of these people who settled the earth. So some, you may recognize some of the ones that I pointed out, like Madai, Ashkenaz, Javan, Magog, Canaan gets his own little window over here. Shinar was the region where Nimrod settled, and there's Akkad up there, and Babylon, Erech. So the reason I want to bring up this map, what I want to point out, there is a story out there. And I'm going to use the word story in the sense of I don't believe it's true. That the reason that, say, the African people have had it rough in history, have been oppressed, have been enslaved, is because they were descendants of Ham, which would be this green color. So that bears out Ham's descendants did settle toward Egypt. Here's Mizraim, so Egypt. Cush settled down here. We recognize Cush was a son of Ham. There's Canaan. And then Put, that was the other son of Ham. So we see them moving out in the area of this green. That makes sense, right? But the thing is, Ham was not the one with the curse. Canaan was the one with the curse, and Canaan settled off in this direction. So we see a little magnification here of Canaan. This would have been the area where the city of Sidon would have been established, and then the Bible tells us that from here south is the region of Canaan. We see all these descendants, these tribes that came out of Canaan. These Canaanites were the ones that Israel eventually was supposed to conquer, because they wound up becoming evil in God's sight. God did not look with favor upon what they were doing. Noah cursed Ham's son Canaan, not Ham. And I don't know that Israel was directly, God was setting Israel in opposition to Canaan to fulfill this curse. I think that you see the way that Ham behaved. Ham was an irreverent son. He was not honoring his father. Was showing some character defects in that account in Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 9. And of course you can imagine how he might have raised his children and how they might have raised their children. So there's a progression, perhaps, I'm speculating, in how the nations would have learned to behave given that line of parenting. Japheth and Shem behave more honorably. You might imagine the kind of upbringing their children would have had. Now, certainly, the people of Israel, Shem's descendants, would have had issues with Japheth later on. Some of the Madai, the Medes and the Persians, they became rulers over the exiled nation of Israel, but Babylon started it. Babylon was in the region of Shinar, established by Nimrod. What the Bible tells us. So it's just interesting to see how this all plays out. But I don't think the curse of Noah has anything to do with the African people proper. It does have to do with Canaan, which is going to be the nation that Israel will be conquering later on. And then one thing I wanted to mention also, this map has this green area here, Ham kind of intermingling with Shem down here. Apparently Ham's kind of intermingling with Japheth up here. That's interesting. But I've seen other maps that have these Hamite peoples down here over by the Persian Gulf. We've got Magog and Gomer here. I've seen maps that have them switched. So I'm not sure if there's complete consensus on where everyone was, but the general shape of the families, where the families settled, from what I understand, is accurate. I want to say, I know the Bible describes Abraham as a wandering Aramean. So here's Aram. That would be a descendant of Shem, according to the colors on the map. Here's Uz would have been an area near where Abraham would have come from. Uz winds up being important in the Bible. I think that's a location where the book of Job is. And after I get done with Genesis, I would like to go just kind of briefly talk about the book of Job, because that would have been written kind of after the events of Abraham, I think, or around the time of Abraham, before the time of Moses, who was the author of Genesis through Deuteronomy. So Abraham would have come from this area, and then God told him to leave his father's house, and Abraham moved down to Canaan and lived among the Canaanites relatively peacefully, and that became the land that God gave to Abraham and his descendants, which we'll find out in the rest of Genesis. So wanted you to see that map. Now we'll get on to a more narrative section of Scripture. So it says in Genesis chapter 11, now the whole earth had one language and the same words. So you can imagine, you've got this man Noah, his wife, his sons, their wives. They're speaking to each other in one language. And as they raise their children are going to speak the language. I am reading a copy of the English Standard Version Bible here. In English, we understand what it says, right? There's also the King James Version of the Bible, which was originally written in 1611. I don't know if what this printing of it is. Let me see if I can find a citation here. Okay, so 1611, 1769 is what they're saying. So a couple hundred years back, but we can still understand what this version is saying, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. That's clear English to us. Now, sometimes they throw in some words that we may have trouble with, like these and nows are pretty common in King James. We don't use the word thee to refer to you anymore the way that they did. So I tend to lean towards the English Standard Version because it was written, translated closer to our time, so it's a bit closer to our English, but this is perfectly understandable, and this would have been from a couple hundred years ago. So naturally, languages tend to last a long time. What happened that we've got so many disparate languages over history? Why is it that we speak so differently from other people? I mean, I'm in the United States. Who knows? You may be watching from the UK. You may be watching from Australia. Those are nations where English is kind of understood to have been, well, definitely it came from the UK, right? It's called English for a reason, England. And then English people settled in Australia. And the English, in all those different places, it has some differences, but it's still understandable to all the different groups. I want to say around in the 1990s, I was doing a project for school on languages, and especially the English language, was studying that. Or maybe it was part of a study on England itself, and I was talking about the language English that came out of England, and in a section of my study. But I read a book, and it speculated that around 2030, American English and UK English would be so different from one another that we wouldn't understand each other. And I just don't see that happening. It's 2021 now. It's not 1995, which is when I think I was doing that study. I don't see any chance of by 2030 not being able to understand, say, the UK YouTubers who are making videos here on the channel. Especially with the popularity of the internet, I think that is less likely now. So, at the time of the start of this, everybody was speaking one language. And as people migrated from the east, I want to mention this is one version of the Bible, and I like to know what most versions say. So this says, and as people migrated from the east. King James says, as they journeyed from the east. So this is kind of more encompassing the whole earth. They, people is kind of a limited, as people, like as some people migrated from the east. The way that most of the versions express this, I'm seeing some people, but like the King James, the New King James, those are the older versions. They originally had it they. So I just kind of like to be aware of how most versions translate the Bible, because I don't want to wind up following a translation that's gone off into left field. I want to try to get as close to the original Hebrew, that would have been the language that the Old Testament was written in, as possible. Oh, I'm going to take a drink here. My voice is starting to feel a little tense. I should have been drinking more throughout, but it says, as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. So Shinar, we've heard of that place before. Shinar would have been Nimrod founded Babel in the land of Shinar. Okay. They found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there, and they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. So I mentioned earlier how the Bible says that that Noah used bitumen to cover the ark inside and outside to protect it from water and to waterproof it. Interestingly, that word for bitumen is a different word than this one. So this one seems to be a substance that comes out of the earth. I don't know if I mentioned that the Bible talks about like bitumen pits, like these tar pits. There's a story coming up in Genesis that involves people during a battle. It doesn't go well for them. They fall into some tar pits, some of the soldiers. It would have been this kind of substance, but the word used for what Noah put on the ark, which interestingly is the same word as for atonement or ransom. So I was joking that Noah had survived the ark on the HHS Ransom, his holy ship Ransom. That's a different word than this one for bitumen. So I just thought that was interesting. So they said, then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. So it's easy to be tempted to think that the people this far back in the world's history were primitive. So, they thought they could touch heaven, huh? With their tower. Haha. But in order for them to construct a tower that would be even tall enough, and this version, I think, does a good job. It says with its top in the heavens. So a plane, we kind of understand a plane is in the heavens for the duration of its trip between point A and point B. So this would be fair. I think there are other versions where they say reach unto heaven. Gives us the idea that they're thinking, it's going to touch heaven. This is not a primitive group of people, because they can construct a tower that is going to be able to last, kind of like our skyscrapers. And given this is shortly after Noah's time, which, to be fair, Noah created an ark that took him 100 years to build. We don't know how to build a ship that long that would weather the stormy conditions that it probably had to sustain. It was large enough to hold at least 2 of every kind of animal that exists. So Abraham, him and his family were pretty advanced in their understanding of construction, and so are these people. They're building this tower, and they say, let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. which is kind of interesting to me because they seem kind of unified on this. I don't know why they would be dispersed if they all want to be united together, if they've got the idea that they're going to be together. We back a couple hundred years ago, back in the 1600s, some people left England, came to the United States, settled in the northeast of the United States, and were interacting with the Native Americans here in the country, and were trying to settle in the United States. And I don't see that there was a dispersion. I don't see that we were forced away from each other. There were some people definitely in the 1800s who chose to explore the frontiers. People chose to spread out in the United States, but there has been a population center in the Northeast that really hasn't been scattered, from what I understand, if I'm not mistaken. So if the United States has lasted this long, why are these people so concerned that they're going to be dispersed over the face of the whole earth? What do they think is going to cause them to be dispersed over the face of the whole earth? Let's go back to Genesis chapter 9. God blessed Noah and his sons and said, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." So God had given Noah and his sons instructions. Your descendants are supposed to fill the whole earth. And these people are not interested, apparently, in fulfilling God's instructions. They all want to stay clustered in one place. So they are saying, let us build ourselves a city and a tower. Let us make a name for ourselves, so that we won't be scattered over, so we won't be spread out through the earth, filling the earth. We want to just be here, which was in opposition to God's instructions for them. So it says, "And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built." So apparently they were successful. They built their tower that reached into the heavens. And just check. Okay, so they were in the middle of construction here. I'll move on before I make any final assertions. But they were in the middle of construction. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them." So certainly we see the advancements that we have now. This is kind of a speed bump, I think, in humanity, and it's an effective one. I'll continue on, and then I'll give my final thoughts here, but got some thoughts coalescing as I'm talking here. God is speaking, saying, "Come, let us go down," and they're confused their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. So sometimes you see God saying, "Let us," like talking to himself, saying, "Let us." Who's this "let us"? I believe this refers to God being a three-part being, a trinity. We humans understand ourselves to be one person. Each of us is one person. The Bible tells us that God is three persons: God the Father, God the Son, which I mentioned earlier is Jesus, and God the Holy Spirit. So I do believe that God has conversations between the three persons that make up this one entity, God. The Bible tells us there's only one God, but three persons. And that is a being I do not understand, cannot explain. I can just trust what the Bible says. There's no contradiction in a description of a being who is three persons. There's no reason to think that such a being couldn't exist. What that looks like, I don't know. I look forward to getting to heaven and getting to see him face to face someday. So, "Come, let us go down," and they're confused their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. So I'm in the middle of construction. Therefore, its name was called Babel. Well, that's interesting. Isn't that the city that Nimrod started? Wasn't he the king? So that's why I think why theologians tend to associate Nimrod with this tower that the people were building. Therefore, its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And Babel sounds like Hebrew for confused. I was looking up the etymology of Babel. I like to look up the past meaning of words. The etymology of the word Babel I was looking up was our English word Babel. And apparently, according to Etym Online is the site that I like to go to, etymonline. I think it's .com, might be .org. According to that site, our Babel and this word Babel apparently have different origins. They just happen to sound like each other. So that's kind of interesting. But its name was called Babel. Sounds like Hebrew for confused. Because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. So the thing they were afraid of happened because they were trying to avoid it. Were trying to disobey God. So that's where I want to stop. And in the description and in the title for the video, let me pull up the full screen cam here. I said that we would be looking at where the different, what the Bible has to say about the origin of different races. Are there different races in humanity? And what the Bible is teaching us here is that humanity all comes from Noah, all comes from this one family, the family of Noah. And Noah had 3 sons that went off to be different people groups, but one race. And then these people came together at one point in Shinar to build this tower. Didn't want to be dispersed, and God separated them by language. You're not going to stick around with people you can't understand. So then the people dispersed, and of course everybody went to in their own direction in the earth. They went in different directions in the different land masses that were I'm guessing still united at that time. That's why we've got populations in the Western Hemisphere when people from Europe and Asia and Africa, where we understand these people to have dispersed, were the people over in North America, South America, those continents would have been descendants also of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. I'm not sure how they were related, but they would have been descendants also. They would have had to come from one of those 3 lines. But the people of the earth dispersed because of language. And then, of course, since they're all separating, they're no longer united in one area, then there's going to be limitations in the gene pool in different locations. So when everyone was together, there was more intermingling. All the genes would have been spread throughout humanity, and as a result of sin, originally Adam and Eve, who had all of the genes, probably had genes we don't have access to because they died out in the flood. The Bible does talk to us about the Nephilim, which, as I understand, sounds like the Nephilim would have been a gigantic race of people, and some of those genes did continue to survive to to this side of the flood. I don't know if they still exist today, but there are giants described in the Bible after the flood, called the Nephilim. But who knows what kinds of diversity in the human race we don't have that would have existed before the flood, but those genes died out when all of humanity, except for Noah's line, ceased to exist thanks to the flood. But so Noah then also has all of the genes that we know of, that we're familiar with, and those genes would have been in his descendants, who, from what I can understand, would have been at first in the same region together. But as sin continues to have its effect in humanity, and death continues to have its effect in humanity, and even our cells are dying, and the mutations of dying processes begin to fill our bodies. Well, we need to have some diversity between people groups. The people need to be split up. Can you imagine the kind of health problems that we might have had if these folks had had their way and had not dispersed, if everybody was just intermingling with one another on into humanity? So God is very wise and very merciful to force humanity to separate, because now we have a group of genes of one side of type over here, and there's another group of genes of one type over here. We've got different pockets of genes, and then eventually those pockets, there's going to be travelers. I'm thinking of Marco Polo going over and investigating China right now. There's going to be travelers who go between and pass those genes between the two groups, but they're not going to be so, there's not going to be so much density of them and of mutations that are developing. The mutations between the different pockets are going to be different. And so that is where we get differences, say, in skin tone or in facial shape, or the various differences in human biology, physiology. They don't come from different races. As I understand it, science is finding that there is what they call Mitochondrial Eve, and they speculate they can trace this person back to a certain place in our world. I don't know that she necessarily would be actual Eve. I want to say that there's also mitochondrial Adam, who may not be necessarily actual Adam. Another fact that's crossing my mind, I think I've heard that just about everybody, at least in Europe, maybe there's other places in the world where this would not be true, but at least everybody descended from Europe supposedly has some blood from King Charlemagne. So he came much more close to our time than, say, Noah or Adam and Eve. Yet everyone can trace some of their ancestry back to him, if what I've heard is true. So, Mitochondrial Eve, Mitochondrial Adam may not necessarily be as far back as the beginning of history according to the Bible, but I think it's interesting that humanity is all being traced back to one person. Because if evolutionary theory is true, then life somehow sparked on this planet, possibly from chemical interactions. Something caused energy to help chemicals to develop into a living organism, a living cell, and then that cell would develop into a multicellular creature, and then from multicellular creatures eventually you get to all of the animals and humans that exist today. But there is nothing in evolution that says that all humans have to come from one same place, if I understand right. I'm no expert on evolution either. I am much more familiar with Christianity than I would be with evolution. But I think it's interesting that it seems like science is bearing out the story of the Bible more than it's bearing out the idea that that mankind would come from different lines. Why wouldn't mankind be several groups of creatures that evolved in a similar manner? Or why wouldn't we come from different apes before we became humanity? And yet we're finding we're more like one family. We all come from especially one woman, but possibly one man also, who that is the origin of humanity. And so there is no great distinction between what we call races. There's no, we're all basically one kind, one family. And so based on the start of the Bible, And we haven't even gotten, I mean, unless you want to assume that there was slavery in the time when every thought of man's heart was evil, we haven't seen any account of slavery in the Bible yet, which is a big issue when you're talking about race. Different races tend to enslave different races. We're not even seeing that kind of behavior yet in the Bible, and it's already giving us an explanation of the different races, saying we're all made in God's image. It's pretty clear from Genesis 1, where that's first instituted as a principle. Adam and Eve, man and woman, their descendants are all made in God's image. And then in Genesis 6, when Noah survives the flood, God makes a covenant with Noah. I'm not going to destroy the earth by flood again. He also says, you can eat the animals now. I gave you the plants for food before. The animals are yours for food also. But anyone who takes the life of a human, be they man or animal, is going to have to answer to God, because man is made in God's image. So God reinforces that. Now we have this this account of people splitting off, going into their own people groups. This would be why there are distinctions between people. I think even distinctions between language would be enough for people to start mistreating one another. And yet each of these people is still made in God's image. They're still descendants of Noah and his sons. So that is the Christian and the biblical way of looking at the distinctions we have between other people. There is no legitimate reason in the Bible to oppress someone, to enslave someone, to treat someone as lesser than you, especially not for race or for physical differences. And you might ask, well, then why is there laws about slavery in the time of Israel? Certainly humanity is wicked. Human culture did eventually adopt slavery. Slavery became the economy of the nations that were not following God. And I can't give a specific reason why God would allow slavery to exist in Israel. I think that there are problems that we have today that we are capable of solving today, given our level of technology, that may have been difficult for the people of that time to solve. Doesn't give them the right to hold slaves, like the nation of Egypt enslaved the Israelites, like we see on into the future. But that's the best answer I have at this time for why God may not have wiped it out completely. But from what I've seen in the law of Israel, and as I get closer to that, I can deal with that. I did say that I was going to create a video regarding slave law, especially as it deals with women. So I did do some research on that. I need to figure out the process of creating videos, especially editing, before I can get down to making that video. That there is enough material there that is a hefty process. And me creating a couple hours stream where I don't have to do any editing is fine, is definitely within my my ability. But I have not yet learned how to edit a video together. So I'm thinking probably I need to start with something small and build my skills up, and eventually I can work my way up to producing that video that I have said that I would do. So Lord willing, that will be on the channel sometime in the probably not very near future. But let's see. It crossed my mind that I had said something about Noah. I think it was a thought that I didn't quite finish. Because I think when I was talking about why God allowed Noah's embarrassing story to be in Genesis chapter 9, I had said, first of all, explaining why Noah wasn't the promised deliverer. But also, I think I mentioned that the Bible is a Hebrew book talking about where the nation of Israel came from, would have been from Abraham. We're going to see the genealogy to Abraham next week. This is where we start to get into Israel proper, where the nation of Israel proper comes from. But before that, the Bible starts with where humanity comes from. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and on the sixth day, God created man, the first woman, and then it tells us about their sons, and then it kind of jumps through a genealogy. It tells us about the people growing, and then we have this event, the flood, that wipes out humanity except for one family. So now we're seeing the significant event that brings us here to the restart of the world's populations again. And now we've gone through a genealogy and a story explaining how these three families have split off to become all of the nations. And let me go ahead and go back here. I kind of skipped over the family of Shem. Talks about Shem was the father of all the children of Eber. Yeah, it's interesting that it's settling on Eber, because we've got, these are Shem's sons, and then these probably would have been the sons. I mentioned that Nimrod was the grandson of Ham. Ham would have been the father of Cush, Cush the father of Nimrod. So it's interesting, Uz. That stands out to me because I believe that's where, that would be where Job, I believe, comes from. I'll have to check on that. But Uz would have been alive probably around the same time as the Tower of Babel was going up, if I'm not mistaken. But then again, we have Peleg was around when the earth was divided. So during or after that period. So we have this line coming down. It's eventually going to come down to Abraham, but this is the family, the Shem, that Abraham is going to come through. So this explains how the nations developed, and then we're going to see how out of those nations Abraham and the people of Israel emerge next week. I think I am getting to the place of babbling, so I'm going to close. Oh, I've been looking through all the verses here and indicating all the verses, and I had my full screen up. So let me quickly, okay. It's because I've got my browser closed. That would be it. Yeah, so I'm going to give you a brief look at what we were looking at. If you want to see any of these names a little more specifically, I was talking about Shem and the sons of Shem. There's Aram and the sons of Aram. Uz. So interesting. Uz was a Shemite. I guess that makes sense. So Abraham was an Aramean, and I think he either came from Uz or he came from Ur of the Chaldeans. We'll find out in next week probably. But from that region, Abraham came. And then here's the reference to Peleg when the earth was divided, and I will wrap it up there. Yeah, I'll wrap it up there. No more talking from me. So now I'll go ahead and fire up Minecraft. I decided last week that I would start getting into the old games. I think I introed based on this. We'll see if we can make any progress to beating these games. I don't think I'll beat Minecraft. Yeah, there's not much value in there. Don't think I'll beat Minecraft today, but instead of abandoning games part way so that I keep things fresh here on the channel, we're going to maybe hopefully start making some progress toward the end of these games. We'll see which game I beat first. Been a long time since I beat a video game. I think these survival games, I just kind of enjoy existing in the world of the survival game. Okay, yeah. I remember making this tunnel, this 1x1 tunnel. I think I'm going to focus on making normal height tunnels from now on, because progress is definitely slow through here, so I'll try to keep things a little more speedy. I'll get out of here and try to get my bearings on where I am, what I need to do in order to beat this game. So we'll see whether this, or my time at Portia, or Raft, or Subnautica is the first game that I wind up make progress in. So I've been to the Nether in this version of Minecraft. Apparently I've got diamond armor. I think my next goal is to get netherite so that I can make netherite armor. How much do I have here? So, yeah. I don't see any netherite here. I think I've got a base in the Nether. So I would probably have my netherite stuff at the base. And I think that base is this way. And there's some sort of cave back here, but I don't think that any of those monsters can actually get to me. They sure make me want to think they can, though. Okay. And those little baby zombies, like the one that's making that noise, are a pain in the neck. Okay, I don't think this will take me to my portal, but there's a lot of iron here, so that's good. I tend to... Whoop, creeper. I tend to quit my games of Minecraft before I really get established in diamond, so I'm still used to thinking that iron is the critical mineral to have. Oh, I haven't explored this area? Okay. I'm not gonna. I want to go to the Nether. Okay. I was thinking I wanted to also talk about something that that really great that happened this week, beginning of this week, right after the last stream that I did. I think probably Saturday. Saturday or Sunday. Got a comment on one of my videos. And it was from someone who had a difference of belief from me regarding the subject of that video. I won't go into detail about who the person is or about what the topic was. But this person had a different point of view than I did. So that's great. That's what I want to hear on the channel. I want to hear from people. Can I get down there? And then, do I have another pickaxe? Because I don't know that I want to wear out the netherite one. Clearly my portal is not down this way. Okay, but I'm just going to light that up. So I love to hear from people who have different beliefs than I do, because while I believe what's right, that I'm in the truth about what I believe, there's always the possibility that maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's something I don't know. And so this person mentioned he had a different belief than I did, and I said, well, I'm not sure that I could ever come to agree with what you believe about this particular thing. But I would be interested in hearing more about it. And I'm not saying this word for word, so if you wind up finding... Okay, what's going... There we go. If you wind up finding my comments... You know what? I want to go back and make sure I don't die with something important, because I tend to die in the Nether, and it's been a while since I've tried to navigate there, so I'm feeling a bit antsy, and other survival games have reinforced the idea that I want to be extra careful here. So let me make sure I am not carrying anything important that I don't want to be carrying if I die in there. Anyway, I'm giving you the abbreviated version as I remember it, so I may not have everything exactly accurate. Hopefully it is reasonably similar if you happen to see the comment thread where we had this conversation. But I figured I want to know what this person believes, just in case it turns out to be something I ought to know, something that I'm not fully aware of. Okay, so I don't think I need the seeds here. Got plenty of wood, but I'm going to put these seeds in here and then move things around. I'll just keep talking while I'm working with my inventory, and hopefully that will be sufficiently entertaining or informational for you. So I was interested, and I said I'd like to know more about the source of your beliefs. So in my abbreviated memory of events, I just kind of got the sense that me wanting to know where his beliefs come from, what the reasons he had for holding these beliefs, I got the sense that that was kind of a threat to him. I can only speculate. Maybe when people start asking questions, maybe the experience that he's had in the past would be that people tend to use questions in an attacking way, and that was not my intention. But certainly as we're communicating in writing over the internet, then perhaps that's the way it comes across. So anyway, I felt like I was doing my best to have a positive conversation, and he was rather demanding of me and my to justify my beliefs, and I felt like I justified them. So I feel pretty positive about my side of the conversation, and I think it was a good conversation. I would rate it as probably one of the 3 best events on this channel. That what I'm looking for is to have conversations with people who disagree with me, and it's okay if maybe if someone is used to being attacked for disagreeing with someone, if they react a little bit more harshly than I'd care for. I get it. That a lot of the times we have certain experiences that shape the way that we see experiences that we encounter in the future. We kind of live the past again. Our past tends to shape the way that we're seeing the events that we're in the middle of. Okay, so now I am done with my autopilot routine here. I can actually do something useful. So I'll just continue autopiloting up here. So sometimes the past winds up impressing itself upon us again. I think I might want that iron. I'm not sure that I want all of it. I'll just leave the iron that I have in my inventory. So I try to be understanding if I'm dealing with someone who, tell you what, there was someone who came on the channel, and I think he did a really good job of how he approached this channel, because I might bring some of my trash with me, and then if I die, or if I need to empty my pockets, then I at least get rid of the trash. So that would be pretty smart, maybe. There was someone who approached the channel, and he knew the dynamic that he was walking into on the channel. He knew that I was a Christian and that I would have a tendency to other someone like him, to see him as someone different than me, and to lose sight of the fact that he's a human made in God's image. I doubt that he believes he's a human made in God's image. I doubt that he accepts the biblical account. I'm probably going to want that cobblestone for building, so let me go ahead and get a full stack here. That'll be good for marking things, and then maybe I can use, when I get into the nether, I can use netherrack, which I'll find in abundance there, to build things. So anyway, this individual who came to the channel recognized that he was probably wading into hot water. So I think even before he said hello, I think he said, "Don't worry about my name," which would have identified him as someone who I would other. Who I might other, I'll say. And definitely his time on the channel was insightful to me, just revealing to me how I did have the tendency to see him not as a person the way that I might see someone around me, but to see him as an other. His approach on the channel was to say, don't worry about the name. I'm just here to watch and enjoy. And that seemed like a catchphrase that he would use, but definitely was a good way, I think, to approach what could have been a dicey situation. And I appreciated that he came in a peaceful way, given that we might have had some tension in the way that because of where we both were coming from. Let's see, I definitely don't want to be carrying emeralds with me, I think. And I like to save saplings. Do I have any there? I don't want to lose these saplings. I'm going to want some wood. I should have... I'll take those logs with me. And then, who knows if I'll need flint and steel. I'm not going to abandon that. I definitely don't want that. I forgot that I had that in there. I don't think I need this if I'm going to the net. I got another boat? When did I get 2 boats? I probably did for good reason, but I'm not too happy about that. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of my horse armor, and then I think that is... Oh. I've got more diamond. So I think I'll go ahead and go with this. And hopefully I won't mind having such nice tools with me. But we'll head off like this. Tools and armor, I should say. But I'm going to need the armor, because if I'm going to be mining for netherite. So that was one individual who came kind of on his there's an apologist that I've heard of. An apologist would be someone who spends their time thinking about and training themselves to give reasons for their beliefs, and in this case it was a Christian apologist who said this, but he the phrase that he likes to use is coming with your hat in your hand, kind of having a humble demeanor toward a person that you're approaching. Sometimes when us Christians want to win an argument, I think when anybody wants to win an argument, we don't come with our hat in our hand. We come with bravado. And let's see, got a lot of good stuff in here that I am not going to bring with me, because I don't want to die with it. Okay, so this individual who I've tangented on about came with his hat in his hand, and I appreciate it. And the person that I spoke with this week was not coming that way, so wound up being a rough conversation, but I was looking forward to being able to discuss different beliefs and why we would hold different beliefs. But eventually I began to feel like he was not valuing me as someone made in God's image. Like he was seeing me as an other. Definitely that is a common tendency. That's why that's what I'm trying to work against on this channel. I want to establish a place where we can... What? Nope, don't want to deal with him. I think he's hunting me now. Yep. I think he's... Yep, he knows I'm here. Bye. Okay, I don't know what I'm going to do about this. Up. Okay. This is not a good place for explosions. I'm not happy with that. I don't think I'm in the version where you can bat those things back at them. So I'm not going to try it. Okay. Now if I'd pressed shift, I would have been able to run, but I did not. I'm seeing these odd blocks here. Did I mark my way in this direction before? I do think that is a biome near where I want to be if I'm going to the Nether, but I'm expecting to see the base where I hid my Nether portal. So I've forgotten the location to my Nether portal out of here. Well, no. There was a Nether portal, but there was also a mine that I was kind of working my way toward. So I'm going to have to relocate that mine. If too much time happens, I'm going to passes, I'm going to relocate that mine, and then I'm going to call it. But if not enough time, I mean, if I find it quickly, maybe I'll do some mining. Weird noise, but these piglins always make weird noises. Anyway, I feel positively about the conversation that I had this week because it was about our differing beliefs. I want to have more conversations about that. That's what I'm aiming for with this channel. I'd love to learn from you and from other people what beliefs that you have that are different from mine. I want to do my best not to attack people who have different beliefs. And what did happen to that ghast? It was following me. I don't hear it anymore. So did it despawn? That would be nice if it despawned. Okay. Maybe I can do some serious searching for that location. I think it was... Wasn't it near... It had to have been near the base lava level. So let me go back to where my other portal was, because I want to get lower, I think. I know they make weird noises, but it always concerns me. There's a bridge there. So would that be... I hate to cross the lava like that, but would that be a bridge that I would have made that would lead to my nether base? My nether mine. That is the kind of warped forest that I'm looking for. And there's my base. That's it. And thankfully I don't have to cross the bridge. So anyway, I do want more conversations like the one I had with this individual, but I also want fewer conversations like the one I had with this individual. I'm looking for opportunities to talk about where we believe differently, and my goal is not to attack people who believe differently from me. My goal is not to seek to change people who believe differently from me. Naturally, since I believe that my beliefs are true, I would want someone to believe the truth. So naturally, I would like it if people eventually came to hold my beliefs, but it's not my place to change them, especially given that their beliefs might be... Who's in my base? Hi, what you doing here? As long as you're friendly. What? What? Oh, I'm gonna ask for trouble. I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. At least I think I can get back to my base. Why did he attack me? I was wearing my gold boots. Okay, so I don't have any tools. Yeah, I keep forgetting which buttons do what. So I've got armor, thankfully. That should be all I need until I get to where I can reach my tools. I might want that for food. So anyway, I'm more than happy to have conversations about our differences of beliefs and to have civil conversations. I didn't even get the sense that this individual was necessarily trying to change my mind about what I believe. I don't know what it was that he was after, but pretty quickly the conversation ceased to be civil, even though I was doing my best on my side. So that's where I would like things to be different is I'm not going to have a lot of stamina for a conversation where I can put that back. And I don't think I need any weapons if I can get back to my base. So let me try as fast as I can to get to my base. Let's see, it was up the ladder. And I forget where my sentence left off. I think I was saying I didn't get the sense he was trying to change my beliefs. I wasn't sure what he was after. That's the last I remember of what I was saying. Definitely would be happy to have a conversation with that person again. If we could have one where it wasn't attacky. So I I think one of the points I was making is I'm not going to have a lot of tolerance if I get the sense I'm being yelled at, if I get the sense that I'm being insulted for any great length of time. So if you're interested in a conversation about our differing beliefs, please don't use a bunch of caps. Please don't shoot the messenger. Basically, don't insult me just because you don't like what I'm saying. One thing I do want to try to do on this channel, one thing I do want to try to establish, being from the United States, I do believe that as much as possible, people ought to be free to talk about what's important to them, what they believe. Another ghast? Oh no, it's right over the hill. Don't see me, don't see me, don't see me, please. Okay, he's going up higher, so... If he doesn't see me now, hopefully he will continue not to see me. And then hopefully this is still a legitimate route to get back to my base. I'm wandering a bit far to the right here. And hopefully any piglins at my base do not remember who I am. Anyway, so I believe people ought to be as free as possible to speak what they believe to be true. So I want to honor that. I want to, I don't want to say ban someone from the channel. I don't see anybody. Oh, okay, good. This is nice. Just because we disagree. I don't want to ban people for that. I want to be as tolerant as possible. Want to have those good conversations where maybe I can learn what it is that you know that I don't. However, I also have to consider what the future repercussions of that tolerance is, and that's something that I think I'm going to have to learn over time. Probably make a lot of mistakes about as I'm running the channel. Because, for instance, there was there's been times where I'm talking about a particular subject and I see someone talking in chat, someone who may eventually watch the VOD actually, and trying to change the conversation, trying to talk about things that that are irrelevant to the conversation, and I'm sure it's because they feel like what I'm talking about is irrelevant to them, so I get it. It's my stream, so I get to talk about what I want to talk about. Let's see, do I want to keep that iron axe? I probably don't want to dull my diamond stuff as much as possible. Let me... I might want this pickaxe. But, well, I might want that sword. It's hard to tell. I've got some netherite scrap, so that's good. I think I need 2 of these to make an ingot, right? And don't I need a furnace in here? Did I take a furnace away from here once upon a time? Okay, let's try this. Yeah, that's not going to work. I think I need 2 netherite scrap for ingot, but at least I've got netherite in there. Anyway, my concern when I'm talking about, say, one subject, especially during the beginning of the stream, during the time when I'm looking at the Bible passages like I was, and I do have gold boots, so that's fine. Oh, and I can cook myself some food. I think that'll be enough wood. My concern, if one person is just typing their own thing, for now that's fine. For now, like I say, free speech. You can talk about what you want to talk about. I may not join the conversation because I'm already having a conversation of my own. I may be on a certain topic. I do want to interact with people in chat, and if someone's got a question about, say, Christianity, religion, philosophy, none of which I claim to be an expert at, but I'm definitely willing to have those conversations. If you want to ask about that during the beginning of the stream, I don't see any reason at this time why I wouldn't have that conversation. Because that's what that time is for, is talking about religion, beliefs, that kind of thing. However, I'm aware right now it's you can talk about what you want. But later on, let's say someone comes into chat and sees this person talking about their own thing and joins in, starts talking about their own thing too. Now I've got two of them. No problem. But if this becomes a thing where people think the culture of the chat is spamming, basically, eventually it may come to the point where someone would like to ask me a conversation in the beginning of the stream, would like to ask me a question, would like to talk about religion or philosophy or something, and they can't get a word in edgewise because there's so much spam going. And I may not know better to slow down the chat because everybody looks like they're having fun and I miss the important question. But that's the kind of question that I do want to be fielding at the beginning of the stream. So that's one of those questions I'm going to have to solve for myself. What I want to, how I want to manage the channel. I haven't decided that yet. That's one of the things that I've kind of been scratching my head about. Oh, I've got more beef there. That's good. I think I am ready to do some mining if my neighbors will let me. I was doing bed mining, but I think I saw a video. I don't know if it was for the for when they were experimenting with the deeper depths. But I think I saw a video that was saying just mining in a straight line might be the most effective thing. Of course, that allows me to fall right into lava traps, so I don't know. And this guy's blocking the path. Can I walk by? Thank you. And hopefully this guy being extra armed is not going to make him extra brave. I was doing bed mining before, but that was definitely a pain for my armor. I think now that I've found my base, I'm just going to focus on... I'm not going to focus on making a ton of progress. I think that torch means there's lava right behind that wall. Because I think I remember coming to a dead end and having to turn around the last time I was trying to mine in here. Okay, there's definitely plenty of lava in this region. So another consideration that I've got, want to try to give as much freedom for people to express their beliefs in their own way. But let's say that someone is extra aggressive about how they express their beliefs. I think I'm willing to take it. I can, not that you should. Don't insult me, please. If you're willing to avoid that, if you're thinking straight, then please don't. We can have a better conversation if we're not insulting one another. But I think that would be a conversation that gets us closer to the truth, actually, because the character of the person you're talking to doesn't change the truth of what you're talking about, right? Nope. I'm gonna leave that visible. So let me see. Can I go this way? Okay. So far so good. But I think I would be more tolerant of being attacked because I kind of expect that. The individual I'm talking about from this week that I had the conversation with, I do not believe he will be the worst individual to come by the stream. I am not inviting you to be that worst individual, but I do expect to have trouble in the future because I talk about things that people disagree with, and not everybody handles those disagreements well. Not everybody is going to see this stream where I'm asking them to behave. I went off on that line and I don't remember where it connects. And I'm getting tired. I think I talked longer during the Bible section than I was expecting to. And I'm holding these streams in the evening now rather than the day, so I'm starting the stream with less energy than I'm used to starting a stream on. So that would be why my brain might be a bit fuzzy. Well, the nice thing is there's probably less exposure to lava, and if I decide to do bed mining in the future, I've got a tunnel that's well made, so I can just lay down beds and automate the mining. I do plan to get back to my my topic when I figure out where I connected with it, or it'll be so far from. This is going to cause lava, isn't it? Nope. Okay. What's up there then? Think we're fine? Okay, can I probably didn't need to break that open because it's going to be higher than where I'm mining. There we go. Ah, there's what I'm looking for. Of course, this is probably going to wind up breaking my pickaxe more quickly. Is there any more? Yeah, I think enough time has passed that I can, if I can remember the thought that I was on, I can just start over. Is that fair? Do you remember where I was? Is that going to be too annoying? Can't help it. It's up. Okay, there we go. Can't help it. It's where my brain is right now. I can't quite get back on the same track. So anyway, I was talking about, yeah, don't insult me, please, but I kind of come to the stream prepared that somebody is probably going to dislike what I believe and is probably going to be insulting. Let's see, I think I want to... I'm just going to branch off again in this direction, I think. Let's see how far I get in this direction, because we know there's lava down here. But, regarding other people, I think where I want to draw lines about what people can say, how much they can say, want to give as much freedom to speak as possible, as much freedom to express what you believe to be true as possible. But where I would draw lines is I don't want what someone says to inhibit someone else from having the freedom to speak, right? So if that's going to be the crowning virtue on the channel, and I'm not sure that should be the highest one, but at least that is one that matters a lot to me. If I'm going to protect freedom of speech, then I want to, as much as possible, I don't think I'll go through the black stone anymore. As much as possible, I want freedom. Let's see, if there's anything that's going to harm someone's freedom to speak, then I think I'm going to have an issue. Okay, yes. It would be nice. Let's see. I saw a meme about Minecraft recently that implies you can't fortune this stuff, which is too bad. That would be... I don't know if it was accurate or not. I assume it would have to be. Can I just go through this a little faster? Oh, okay. I've got... This gets smelted, and it becomes scrap, right? So that's where if I'm going to draw lines about what people can say, definitely I don't want one person's freedom to speak to be infringed because someone else was using their freedom to speak to hinder. Yeah, you kind of get what I'm saying, right? I want to... If I've got to affect one person's freedom to speak, it's going to be the one who would harm someone else's freedom to speak. But the other thing is, if someone feels like they get attacked on this channel, doesn't that hinder their freedom to speak? They feel like they can't speak because they're going to get attacked. So, and that's a fine line to draw. How do I know whether something is meant to be an attack or whether we're just being sensitive about it? So that is an area that I want to put off arbitrating as long as possible. I want to take more time to think about it. So my concern then, let's say someone has a habit of addressing differences with other people in an aggressive manner, in a way that other people are going to think is abrasive. Other people are not going to care for it. They're going to think that person is attacking. Maybe they'll be sensitive to that person. Maybe that person doesn't even intend to attack. They just have an aggressive way of expressing themselves. In that case, I would rather that person has their freedom to speak as much as possible. I'm concerned that if they speak roughly, if they attract negative attention, then they're going to draw, well, that the attention they draw will be negative and that people will start to attack them for no valid reason, but they'll think it's valid. People will start to pick up grudges on behalf of me or others on the channel. People who maybe aren't as concerned about everybody having the freedom to speak. I don't want a person who's aggressive to get attacked either. So it's, those are the challenges with running and moderating the channel. I don't want to be the nanny in the kindergarten who's making all of the kids behave like little lambs because we got to play nice, that kind of thing. I want the people in chat to be themselves. And I want to be able to address, to deal with arguments. I want to be able to express arguments. I want to be able to deal with arguments in an accurate way, including if someone has an emotional point of view, if someone feels emotionally about something, I want them to be free to express how a fact or how a belief affects them emotionally. I want us to be able to have conversations that don't just deal with the academic issues. You got surprised by that piglin, and ever since the nether base death, I'm a little bit extra skittish now. But thankfully, I did not fall off the path, so that's good. I want to have more than just the academic conversations where everything is theoretical. If someone is hurt by someone else's belief or feels that someone else's beliefs are hurtful, I want to find out about that, and I want to engage with that too. How would we better care for one another? How would we better treat each other as humans? Even if we don't come to agreement, since I presume, I would like to think that our intention is not to hurt people, then how can we avoid that even though we disagree? Okay, we're fine. But we may not be able to have those conversations if we're not free to express ourselves rawly, right? So that's one of those dilemmas, one of those moral dilemmas that makes life interesting. I think I'm going to smooth this over. Ah! There. Got some ancient debris. Think I'll smelt what I've got and see if I can turn this into anything useful. I forget how ancient debris interacts with tools. I think you can use it with diamond tools, and that'll make them stronger. But I forget exactly how that works. So we got our ancient debris, and I do not have logs. Do I have logs in here? No. I lost all my logs? I thought I brought logs. I've got saplings that I'm never going to plant, I think. So, I'll do that. I've got planks, but I need more than just 2. I'll go ahead and put the 2 in there, and then I can use the saplings. Because 2 planks should make 3, and then I can use 2 more saplings. Yeah, that's the ancient scrap. And then I don't know if I can cover over that pickaxe and protect it, or if that one's a lost cause. Maybe it needs to be repaired first. Clearly, I was able to make something of netherite, but I forget how that process works. So, I think... Do I need an oh, upgrade gear. Well, does this work? No. I think it's got to be something new. I do have... That one's full. I forget if this is a new fishing rod and they use durability, so I think I need something that has no durability bar on it. What do I need to replace my netherite? Or be able to repair my netherite pickaxe, so let's try that. We'll make a new netherite pickaxe. Except I don't have planks or sticks. So, I'm not going to die with that. I'm going to bring my netherite with me. The nether quartz can stay, I guess, because that will probably be valuable. Oh. Anything? Well, I'll leave that here because I've got the smithing station. Maybe next stream that I'm in Minecraft. Maybe next stream that I'm in Minecraft I can work on that, and then I can have about a month to research what you do with netherite, and then I'll have it good in my head, I hope. All settled in. So I'll actually know what I'm doing. So that's done. I'm going to need logs, so I'm going to go to the home base. Oak base, I like to call it. Where we started. Don't anybody start getting feisty. Okay. This is not the safest way across. But I am not near the safest way across. Okay, shortcut. I've been walking on plenty of these paths. Just because there's more lava doesn't make it more dangerous. Okay, good. I don't know if anyone watching this video is ever going to be curious about becoming a moderator on the channel. One thing that I definitely would be looking for if I were going to take someone on as a moderator, first thing, of course, with anybody, with any channel, I've got to make sure I can trust the person who's going to be a moderator if that's going to happen. I may be not able to get to the level I want to. So I'll explore around a bit. Okay. Taking the slow road here. Is there a way to get back to my base from this side? This is definitely the biome. I don't recall if I've ever been this way or done any damage in this direction. Anyway, regarding moderating, definitely it would be important for me to trust the person, just as with any channel who is going to have a moderator. Gotta know that the person who would be doing any moderating shares my values. I'm not saying at this time that they would have to be a Christian like I am, but that they would be able to uphold my standards for the channel. But the big standard that I would need to know they could uphold, are we going to have a problem? I think we're going to have a problem because I just hit you. Okay, let's go. Ah! Okay, nope, I forgot about them. Are you guys burning? I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. I'm running. Now, the big guy hit me and didn't burn me, but just all those little ones, it was too much for me to manage to account for. Anyway, the value that I'd have to make sure that a moderator especially would uphold that I care about is they'd have to also have a high tolerance for someone's ability to speak, even if it's in a way or about a subject that the moderator would disagree with. So that's the thing, is I think a lot of these stream channels, definitely however you want to run your channel is up to you and you have the right to do so. But I think a lot of stream channels, people are used to, if someone does something unpleasant or not polite, say, or not correct, then that person's banned right away. I've seen channels where you have to appeal being unbanned, and I'm very new to the streaming environment. This is probably something all channels deal with, something that I am fortunately do not have to deal with at the moment, but will at another time in the future. So I think a lot of channels are going to be more what am I thinking? Are going to be quicker with the bans than I want to be. That doesn't mean that you get away with anything. I'm still trying to sort out what my rules are. You probably don't want to be my experiment. You don't want to be the one that I decide, okay, this is a rule. And you're on the wrong side of it. We can't have that. But I do want to try to make sure that we have room for a good discussion. Anyway, about the conversation this week, eventually it got so aggressive that, and I was doing my best not to be aggressive. I think I did a fair job at not being aggressive, but eventually I just got tired of feeling yelled at, and so I decided I'm not going to push myself to stay in a conversation where I feel abused, basically. Because the more I push myself into that conversation, the more I may misbehave myself. Because if I'm getting tired, if my fuse is running short, look, I don't want to abuse the person that I'm talking to. It seemed like this person I was talking to has already had some negative repercussions for the way they communicate, for the beliefs they have, that kind of thing. I didn't want to expand on that. I didn't want to cause more trouble for them. And now one thing I do appreciate about the individual I spoke to this week, I really do respect them more than I otherwise would for their decision here. I got to the end of the conversation. I said, I'm tired. I'm done. I'm not going to continue in this comment thread anymore. Seems like you're not getting the value out of the conversation, so I'm not feeling interested in continuing it. And what I really appreciate about this individual is that they did not fire a parting shot. Because I think a lesser person, and not a lesser in value person, just maybe a lesser in character person, would have taken that as their opportunity to have the last word. Okay, she's not going to respond back to me, so now I get to tell her what I really think of her, and that'll be the last word. And anyone who reads the common thread is going to have my opinion ringing in their ears, and that's and would, I think someone else might use the opportunity of my silence to seed negative opinions of me, or at least to try to in the thoughts of the readers. And this person did not. I said, okay, I'm done. I won't be commenting anymore in this comment thread. I'm tired. And they stayed silent, and they did not try to fire a parting shot. They did not try to have the last word. They did not try to leave a lasting impression in the minds of readers that would be negative about me or about my beliefs, and I really appreciate that. And I trust it's not just that they didn't think to do that, and they would have if they had thought of it. I trust that it wasn't important enough to them, that was not a meaningful behavior to them, that they had the character to say, yeah, we're done. That's as much value as is going to come of this conversation, and the best thing we can do here is to end it. I don't know what their thoughts were, but definitely I think better of them for that decision. So I'm home, and I'm thinking I'm about done. I'm worn out. I'm tired of streaming, so I'll call it a day here, and I'll be back next week. I'll see if I can fire up my time at Portia and continue that game. See if we can move a little bit further in that game. And thankfully, I survived this game with some extra netherite scraps, so I'm happy about that. And that will be it. God bless you, and play kind.